Welcome back, everybody. Very happy to be here with Professor Metzger, who is at Dalhousie University. And why don't you take a minute, introduce yourself, and then we'll dive into our chat.
Yeah, hi Emma. Hi everybody. Thanks so much, Danny, for the introduction. So I'm very happy to be here. It's been a super interesting event so far. So my name is Michael Metzger. I'm an assistant professor in physics at Dalhousie University in Halifax. So, I'm part of a team over there. We have a research partnership with Tesla, and my very close colleagues are Jeff Dahn and Chongyan Yang. And together we have a group of about 30 researchers, graduate students and postdocs, and we, try to work on all aspects of battery technology, really.
Great. So I'd like to start where your East Coast colleague, Mark MacArthur, left off with his really beautifully eloquent statement that research is expensive. So it is. You are in a very expensive industry, and you have a really unique setup with where you are. So let's start with what all that funding money is going towards currently. What's new?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, Mark definitely hit a good point there. And, our research partnership with Tesla, it really allows us to have a relatively big research group. And of course, with more people, more stuff can get done. And of course, also our mandate at the university is, right, that we work together with students, teach them about batteries, teach them how to become a researcher, and then ultimately go and join the workforce. And for us, it's really nice, that we have that partnership with Tesla. They obviously bring us a lot of the really relevant, super tough research questions that we can tackle. And at the same time, we have funding to have that large research group, a state-of-the-art laboratory. And I want to say that, it also helps us because, with such a large group, the students, they really learn from each other, right? And we just provide sort of the environment through that research funding we have through Tesla.
Does it make a difference in the type and quality of the research you can do, having that for lack of a better term, stable income?
I think it definitely helps us to really focus on the work, be in the laboratory rather than at your desk writing research grants, So I think this long-term funding, this real commitment we have through Tesla, I mean, many of you guys may know that Tesla also has a research facility in Dartmouth, right next to Halifax. So they have a real long-term commitment to that partnership with Dalhousie University. And for us, it means that we can focus on the work, and really be in the laboratory, write research papers rather than, chasing research grants.
So what are some of the projects that longer-term focus have been able to yield?
I can maybe give a few recent highlights, if you will, about what we did. I mentioned we work on many different aspects of battery technology, but I have to say, we don't work on large battery modules or packs. I mean, we're university researchers, right? And we have standard laboratories like you know them, right? We cannot really handle very large cells that would also be, more dangerous to handle than the small prototypes that we work with. So what we do is we basically work on everything from, let's say, the materials that go into the battery all the way to sort of lifetime testing of smaller prototype cells. And within that space, we work on cost, energy density, lifetime, safety is a big one, and then also the share of sustainable elements in the batteries. These are sort of our broad goals. And, one example is, and that I think hopefully shows you that, fundamental research can really make an important contribution. So, we were testing a lot of our battery cells recently at very high temperatures, like 55, 70 degrees C, 85 degrees C. I think when you were in our laboratory, you saw some of this, right? And we do that so that the parasitic reactions in the battery cells, the aging of the battery cell basically is accelerated, because oftentimes we don't want to test the cells for many years. So when we do that, we do sort of a chemical analysis of the electrolyte, the liquid which is inside the batteries, see which new degradation products have formed. And in that particular example, when we cycle those battery cells at high temperatures, we see sometimes that the electrolyte liquid, it turns completely red. So, clearly some new molecule must have been formed, and we were basically able to trace this molecule back to the tape that is used in every battery cell, really, to hold the electrodes together, no matter if it's a wound battery cell or a stacked battery cell. So, we found out that these tapes, when they are made of PET, polyethylene terephthalate, right, they can decompose in this harsh cell chemistry and release this molecule, which is a bad actor in the battery cell. In fact, it leads to the self-discharge that a lot of battery cells are experiencing. So, and then we could replace that tape with a more stable polymer and in that way eliminate the source of self-discharge. So this is just an example of a sort of a fundamental research project that was quite interesting for us.
And if you're going to scale that kind of breakthrough in terms of the industry implications, is that on a scale of 1 to 10? What are we talking about?
I mean, the thing is, it's very easy to implement that, right? So we were contacted right after these research papers have been written by many big companies that make battery cells, in gigafactories, really at the gigawatt hour scale, right? And it's basically a drop-in solution to replace this PET jelly roll tape with polypropylene tape, for example. And then, you can eliminate this source of self-discharge. And I think when you scale it up, it means just that, batteries can hold their charge for longer times, which of course is important for EVs, it's important for consumer electronics, it's important for many different applications, and ultimately it also means that you waste less energy, right? Because even if a lot of that self-discharge can be recovered when you plug the battery in again, your car or your device, you eliminate that source of self-discharge and eliminate a potential waste of energy.
So picking up on one of your lab's goals, which is longevity of a battery. This is not a brag, but I have actually seen the 6 million kilometer battery in its cycling, sorry, I'm going to botch this horribly, it's machine. So do you have an update for us on that battery and where it's at now?
Well, you said it, right? It's a 6 million kilometer battery, basically. It used to be a 1 million mile, a 1.6 million kilometer battery, right? When back in 2019, my colleague Jeff Dahn with his students wrote this research paper. And really what they did is they just wanted to show how good advanced battery cells can be, right? Because oftentimes in the academic literature, we see that, performance is compared to maybe a poor benchmark cell, for example, right? But we of course have to compare new battery technologies to the real state of the art, right? And now the cell, these cells that we are building, if we make a good battery cell, it stays on task. We don't take them off, And so now the cell has been cycling for about 6 years, I believe, 20,000 cycles, full charge, discharge. And, if you do the math and say 1 full charge is 300 kilometers driving range, then you're at 6 million kilometers.
Still going.
Still going strong.
What does that tell you about, or tell your researchers about the longevity of battery cells and how we've all been imagining, they could, go down in a car and then your car doesn't work anymore. You're looking at tens of thousands of dollars in repairs. Is that actually is it that likely to happen?
A lot of people might say, why do you need 20,000 cycles, right? Why do you need such an awesome lifetime? And we like these long lifetime batteries because, for one, it reduces the load on the recyclers, right? I mean, if a battery can last so long, why would you tear it apart and recycle the raw materials, right? If it's still a good product. So, and, if you have a car and you maybe drive it for 10 years or something like that, but the battery is still perfectly fine, from our perspective, it makes sense to put it into maybe a second life application, where you can store renewables from the grid. Mark from Novonix has mentioned Lucas Swan, a professor at Dalhousie University, good colleague of mine. He has basically a shipping container with 4 different battery packs from different manufacturers, different chemistries, And if you have a clever battery management system, you can perfectly use these old car batteries that still contain a lot of energy and use them to store renewables. So his system is feeding electricity into the grid, absorbing electricity when the price is low. It's a good idea.
And how do you think that second life usage, particularly as it pertains to energy and energy storage, will feed back into the loop for battery manufacturing in Canada?
I mean, the way we see it, we need to produce as many batteries as we can. So, if you can make the batteries last longer, by all means, I think it should be done, right? Because, if we are really serious, and want to move away from fossil fuels, we need to replace a mind-boggling amount of energy that we're currently getting from fossil fuels. There are different reports out there, but maybe it's on the order of 300, 400 terawatt hours, okay? So I believe we have seen a chart this morning, 2023, we've roughly made 1 terawatt hour per year, right? So if these batteries last 8 years, say, the typical warranty period of a battery in a car, then, in 8 years from now, we have to make this 1 terawatt hour again. But really what we need to do is increase the share of deployed battery assets as much as we can, so that ultimately we hit these 300 or 400 terawatt hours of energy storage we need for a completely electrified future. So we think, we need to produce as many cells as we can, and the longer they last, the better.
So in terms of a fearless future for this chat, what do you think is happening the next 3, 5, 10 years in the battery world?
Yeah, of course, we have a really great community in the, let's say, battery materials space. There's super exciting research papers out there. Maybe I highlight two research directions. We've already heard today about sodium-ion batteries. So I've been in China in December at a sodium-ion battery conference. And
thrilling.
It's happening. It's happening. So sodium-ion batteries are at 42 gigawatt hours a year. Okay, that's where lithium-ion has been 12 years ago. And maybe they go like this, and then it's a real alternative. Okay, so of course the energy densities are not as great as lithium-ion, but for example, in my group, we're working to getting the energy density of sodium-ion batteries up and getting them close to where LFP is. And so for me, that's a very exciting research direction, because sodium-ion batteries can really have a place, and that opens up more lithium-ion capacity for the high-performance applications. And the other trend in the field that for sure many of you have heard of are solid-state batteries. I think it's a very challenging battery concept, but again, we need all batteries that make sense. Okay, any battery that you can build that can help us, I think, is great. And solid-state batteries certainly have a lot of fundamental challenges that need to be overcome, but of course also hold great promise, right? So, some of the challenges are, if you do away with the liquid electrolyte, how do you make sure in an electrode that you have a very intimate contact of the solid electrolyte, the active material, the carbon, the binder, everything needs to be intimately connected. A liquid can fill all those pores very easily, but with a solid electrode, that becomes very difficult. Also, if you use lithium metal on the negative electrode side, in a real duty cycle that you have in a product where you charge fast, but you discharge oftentimes rather slowly, there can be the issue of lithium dendrites forming and so on, which can be a safety hazard. So, we need to work hard to make these solid-state batteries become a reality, but we need any battery we can get.
One of the themes that I've heard today is that workforce remains a big issue in Canada. How do you see that developing? And to borrow a phrase that was said earlier, the investment in workforce being proportionate to the investment in battery technology.
Yeah, so of course, it's kind of our mandate at the university, right, to train people up and hopefully make them join the workforce. And we can only do that so fast in our research group. I mean, it takes 4 or 5 years to produce a graduate student with a PhD degree. So, we see the need. We have heard this morning 3,000 employees in the PowerCo factory. Where do those folks come from, right? I mean, luckily we have a lot of really good institutions in Canada, but we at Dalhousie, we try to do our part. We have sort of proposed to establish a master's program in battery technology. Hopefully, we find the funding to pull it off, but we have created a curriculum, pushed it through the various stages at the university, and we would be very excited, to launch this program and then hopefully be able to produce more students with a master's degree, because oftentimes, there is not a need for everybody to have a PhD degree, right? And we think that we can make a contribution there, but of course, as you hinted, I mean, there also needs to be a sort of financial commitment into the workforce training, just like there is into the research infrastructure side.
Research is expensive. So for industry in the room, what can you say in the last couple of minutes before we open it up to audience questions about the Tesla model and the, partnering with an OEM if you're a lab? Do you think this is a model that should be and could be replicated?
I mean, we of course like very much to collaborate with Tesla. It's very enriching for us. We get a lot of the research questions that are tough and important, and since we're the exclusive research partner, we, have a very tight collaboration with them. And at the same time, I think it's also really good to do fundamental research, right, which maybe does not need an industrial partner, right? So I think there are, definitely a lot of valid approaches, and it's not for everybody maybe to, have such a close relationship with an industrial partner, which can often be, very fast-paced sometimes. But I feel like for us it's good because, Tesla, they need to move very fast on certain topics, but we can do things quite slowly and carefully at the university, so it's a good synergy, I feel like. Right?
Checks and balances.
Exactly.
Great. Well, does anyone have any questions they want to bring up to the mic? Yes.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, my name is John Nasser. I'm engineering manager at Ford Motor Company. So in terms of, I know you do a lot of research on Tesla. You don't have to tell me about Tesla. One of the biggest inhibitors for customers right now, or what we interface with the customers, is the range on the battery. So the promised range for these units when you have a full charge is, let's say, X number of kilometers. From your research, and this is just a general question about the battery, since you're doing a lot of research about the battery, why the expectations or why the reality of the range is different from the expectation of what the customer is looking at? Is it something to do with the charging patterns of the battery? Is it temperature related? Or this is driving patterns that they get different mileages? And I've heard from different car manufacturers. So I don't know if you have done the research in this area. Thank you.
So sorry, I'll just repeat the question for the camera. So it's why is the reality of the range on a vehicle not necessarily falling in line with the expectation?
Yeah, so of course, overall, I think you can have electric vehicles with really attractive range, right? And of course, a general question is maybe whether we really need the extreme ranges that some EV makers are offering. Maybe our customer the customer perception will also change on that front. But then, of course, we have situations like, for example, now in Nova Scotia, we have very cold temperatures, lots of snow, right? I mean, there you have other users for the battery charge in your vehicle. You need to heat your seats. You have other drainages for the battery capacity. Plus also, of course, lithium-ion batteries, right? If you want to operate them at very cold temperatures, then it's harder for the lithium ions to move. Obviously, you have higher internal resistances, so your range goes down. But other than that, I think it's really a quite compelling product, right? The electric vehicle, and unless you live in a climate with very extreme temperatures, I think the range is probably pretty much on spec.
Great. I'm sorry, I didn't see which of you came first. Okay, go ahead, Mo.
Michael. Quick question just on, we talked about batteries mostly in the context of light-duty vehicles for the most part, but as you know, heavy-duty vehicles are being developed right now, and battery charging or vehicle charging up to 2 megawatts, potentially up to 4 megawatts. Chargers have been approved in terms of the charging standards. How does that, what does that kind of do to the battery in terms of its life cycle and performance in terms of trying to charge at such high power? And is there any kind of innovative technologies or pieces that you're working on to solve that issue?
Sorry, so I'm going to jump in for the question. Sorry.
Of course, good point.
How does high-powered charging affect a battery, and are there any innovative solutions to that issue?
Yeah, so fast charging is probably the biggest stressor for a battery. So you want to make sure that all the lithium you want to put into the negative electrode when you charge the battery is really going inside the layered structure of graphite, which is obviously the most used negative electrode material, or alloys with silicon, if you use some silicon in your negative electrode. But what you can have is so-called lithium plating, right? More like on the surface of these particles, which then leads to side reactions that are diminishing your lifetime of your battery. So, there are engineering solutions, of course, to heat up the battery pack when you want to charge at high power. Good thing is the batteries themselves, they generate heat when you charge them fast, right? And the other opportunities I see, you can do really creative sort of microstructuring of your electrodes. You can sort of increase the porosity to make it easier for lithium ions to move. You can use materials like silicon, as I mentioned, that have a different voltage profile, as we say, from graphite, so you're further away from this threshold where you start to generate the lithium plating. So I think there are opportunities to solve this.
Thanks. Did you have a follow-up? Or?
Nope.
No? Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Vincent Caron. I'm Director of Inter-Government Relations at Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. You mentioned the workforce component a bit at the end there, and was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on this, given that you worked on the program for Dalhousie for battery, and maybe from an upskilling perspective, because our car association was vocal last week, just telling governments with the thousands of jobs we're going to have in the battery space. We really need to look at where are these people going, coming from, as you were saying. So what kind of skills are we really looking for? I mean, we're really talking about chemistry, right? Which is a place where the auto sector wasn't, we didn't have as many people really engaged in that field before. So from really at a granular level and at the skills level, where would you say we need to look for in terms of people with those skills that maybe won't take 4 or 5 or 6 years to acquire them, like for that shorter pathway to having the people we need?
So just to recap, it's a workforce question. What sort of skills should automakers be looking for, and is there a way to fast track to talent during this time where we're scaling up our own programs?
Yeah, so the way we envision this program, and I have to say, at the moment, I was quite glad that my colleague this morning also mentioned, what it takes to create such a curriculum, right? And the different steps you have to take for departmental improvement, faculty improvement, Senate improvement, and so on. So we just went through that entire process in about 6 months, and we are now at a stage where we can really sort of look for funding to set up teaching labs, because as you said, the skills you want to teach are often very applied. How do you make an electrode, right? How do you assemble a battery cell? How do you wire individual cells together to create a module? How do you write BMS software? These are the sort of hands-on skills we try to teach our students, but then of course that will be supplemented with courses so that they really learn about the science behind battery cells. And it's very chemistry heavy, as you said, right? So, what we're doing is we want to hopefully establish teaching labs for a 16 months course-based master's program where we would have students for 2 semesters at our university. We teach courses, we have these hands-on lab components, and then we send them off to internships. So we have already partnered with a lot of companies that are interested to take interns from this program. And then hopefully, the students there, they can get training on the job, and then hopefully even like a employment in these companies right after, right? And so then you don't need to write a master's thesis, you don't need to be a teaching assistant at the university, which is all things that take away from your time learning about batteries. So we want to make this sort of laser focused and relatively fast. Probably most we can do is a cohort of 100 students a year. So hopefully, it's a small contribution, but hopefully a meaningful contribution to training up the workforce.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. First, an anecdote. A number of years ago, I was at a conference in the States on unmanned vehicles, and they were talking about Tesla donating used Tesla batteries to the Park Service, and they would use them to light parking lights at night. So they solar charged, but repurposed to do parking lots, which I thought was great. But my question is about electric vehicles. We heard that the battery life keeps increasing. I personally only drive 50 kilometers a day, so I don't need a 1,000-kilometer car. And maybe there's a market for a car that has a smaller battery in it with less distance that is more cost-effective. So here's an example. Last year I bought a Kona. My sister-in-law bought an electric Kona. Same car. The difference in price is 40%. So I can take that 40% and put it in the bank and earn more money than she's going to earn by not paying for gas to power her car. But that car has a resale value that at year 7 probably goes to almost nothing. So if you could increase the battery life to maybe the expected life of a car, then the consumer is protected in terms of their resale value, because in 7 years maybe it'll have more value if it's electric. So the question is, rather than try to make the battery range longer, how can we make the battery life longer?
So the question is, instead of trying to make the range increase, how do we extend the lifetime of the battery?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good point, and I absolutely agree with your comment in the beginning. If you're commuting, right, driving 50 kilometers maybe or so, you don't even want to carry around the battery pack that can drive you 500 kilometers, right? It's just weight that you add to the car, and of course you have to pay for this battery capacity, right? Because the battery, of course, is still the most expensive component of an electric vehicle. So lifetime, as I mentioned, it can be absolutely incredibly good of lithium-ion batteries. And the way to do it is you keep the voltage relatively low, and you use advanced positive electrode materials that are not prone to cracking and increasing their surface area as the particles expand and contract. You want to use really good electrolytes. We have done a lot of development on that in our laboratory. Small specialized molecules that passivate the positive and the negative electrode really well. You want to use a very good graphite for the negative electrode. And yes, that will increase the upfront cost of the battery to a certain extent. But if you can use that battery for many decades, even after you're done using your car, maybe you can still own it as an asset, or you sell it to a utility company or whatnot, then you can continuously make money off that battery, right? I mean, you store electricity when it's cheap, you sell it when the price is high. So I see a lot of future maybe EV manufacturers or utility companies, hold on to those assets and don't even sell them, right? Because they are so valuable. So I think there are strategies, to put it in a nutshell, that can make your battery really have incredible lifetime. If you're willing to pay this a little bit higher upfront cost, then you can get an enormous return on investment.
Excellent. I don't think anyone else is at the mic, so I'm happy to jump in with another question of my own if you're still game.
Sure.
Just tying a little bit back into the workforce question and future looking, one thing we didn't touch on was the importance of this being an interdisciplinary initiative, this being decarbonization. So, working in a university gives you a unique perch there. You have access to lots of different departments. Can you speak to breaking down those silos between the groups that haven't had to talk to each other before?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you it's fun. We work with folks from all over the world, different disciplines. So we have students from, I believe, 13 different countries. We just had folks from Nigeria, Kazakhstan join us. We have somebody from Estonia. So, many different nationalities represented. And the nice thing about battery research is it's very interdisciplinary, right? So we're at a physics department, but we have a lot of students that are chemists. We have students that are material scientists, mechanical engineers. So I, as a physicist, I learn a lot from talking to, let's say, our students that are really, really strong in chemistry, right? So it's really fun. And I think if you work on an interdisciplinary product like the battery cell, then automatically you're breaking down those silos because you need those different skills, right? And as I said in the beginning, I mean, ultimately, we're only creating the environment for all those students to collaborate, right? And they learn probably more from talking to each other than they learn from talking to us. So I think we're doing a decent job at breaking down those silos.
Thank you. Last call? No? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here, Michael.
Pleasure.
And happy to hand back to you, Nino.
Thanks.